Welcome back to the Generations of Hunt podcast. This is your host, Joe, with my co-host.
Yeah, Mike Hemby, aka Dr. Mike, filling in for Minkus today. Matt is in Minnesota for a work travel, so I was in Michigan and figured I'd stop back in and take his place.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So we got an awesome guest, a businessman, and it's
That's a
Josh
stretch.
Miller.
That's a stretch. I don't call myself a businessman. That doesn't sound good.
Oh, well, you got 3 years to show a profit or it's a hobby.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm not the IRS. So if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Miller. I'm the owner of Triplepoint. I invented the Clovis mechanical and fixed blade broadheads. Former teacher for about 20 years. Oh, you got your pack here. Yeah, I grabbed the. That's weird.
Yeah,
I got the green screen effect there, but there's a pack of Clovis there. I didn't know I was going to do that with that background on there. But yeah, my wife and I, we were teachers for 20 years. I taught STEM, engineering and science and robotics at the high school level. Taught a little bit of anything science-wise except for biology, really. And then eventually, led to one thing another, led to the development of the Clovis Broadhead, and decided at some point to kick this whole thing off.
And Josh, what's your background in hunting? How did you grow up hunting? When did you get more introduced? When did you get more heavy into the archery game? I guess before you answer that, I'll explain to the listeners here how you and I got introduced. So I'm on the field staff for Trees and Camo, and Mike Austin had invited me to take a hunting trip with him that you've also done, and we haven't really talked about this, Joe, yet, but well, you and I have, but we haven't talked about it on the podcast. That this July we are going to South Africa on a bow hunting trip, and you're on the same trip. You've hunted with Mike and Johan and the Hunt Tech Pro guys before, so that's how we got introduced. And then we started messaging back and forth about arrow setups and broadheads, and I'm actually going to be shooting the 150 grain fixed Clovis from Triplepoint, and I'm excited about that. I put it through the target a few different times, and I brought it here so Joe could play with him a little bit too. So
He might not get them back.
yeah, we'll see. I might have to order another pack. But talk to us a little bit about your origin into hunting and bow hunting, and kind of how you got to the point where you wanted to start Triplepoint, and kind of where that's navigated you and where you are today.
Yeah, I think it all started for me as a kid, and most people, it was 9, 10. You've got your Red Ryder BB gun out back behind the house, attempting to shoot mom's songbirds that she's trying to get to come in to feed in the bird feed and stuff, and trying to snipe one off here and there. And you develop an interest in getting out in the woods. And I think it was early high school, I wanted to start bow hunting. And my dad never really was a bow hunter. He was a diesel mechanic and busy all the time. So, part-time farmer. We're in the shop, we're in the barn working on transmissions, and just didn't have a lot of time to hunt. And so I kind of took an interest in it. And we had a 250-acre farm, my grandfather did. So here in Killbuck, Ohio, I went out, and my dad had I think it was a Barnett crossbow, one of maybe their old school ones. And I had one bolt, and didn't know anything about broadheads or bow hunting at that point in time, and just started going out and hunting. The matter of fact, I think the first hunt I ever did in my life, I actually set up on a big glacial erratic boulder, and I saw probably the biggest deer alive to me in the woods I've ever seen the very first time I went hunting. So if you can imagine the interest of a kid, I didn't know how big that deer was, but I mean, and I know some people, get these ideas of, well, you can't tell how big a buck is by what it's rubbing on, and I get that to a degree. But this buck was so enormous that he was actually rubbing on an electric pole in my dad's farm field. And if you know how big around electric poles are, it's a good berth. And he was rubbing that thing like crazy. But he actually had so much mass. I don't know if he was 10, 12. I don't really know how many points he was, but it's just like a wall of tines on both sides. And he had everything: height, character, mass. But the mass was so heavy that he had palmation. So, in between the tines, the bone was so massive that it was palmated in between the tines. And I remember he was chasing a hot doe across a fence from on top of a hill, jumped across the township road, stopped broadside in front of me at 30 yards. And I had no idea what the yardage was, because of course I didn't range yards because I didn't know what I was doing. And I put that Barnett crossbow on him, and I remember pulling the trigger, and it had zero power, even for 30 yards with that bolt. And it may have not even been the right bolt. I have no idea. But I remember watching that bolt kind of do a projectile motion arc and hit about 20 yards in front of that deer in the ground. And I had no more bolts because I had one bolt to hunt with. And I got to watch him chase that doe out of my life and never saw it again. So
And Josh,
it
how
was
old were
like,
you then?
Oh, I was probably, I say 14 at that point in time. But if that
Okay.
doesn't ignite a kid, I'm sure you guys have the same kind of parallel stories. There is something that ignited you about hunting, and then you just were in it at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that's very powerful because a lot of people like get defeat, and I think that's where you just like some people just like get that crossbow, chuck it in the woods, and then
Yeah,
never see it again. Because I mean,
yeah,
but that's really funny because this last weekend I was up at TAC and we were talking to a bunch of people, and it's funny because like I maybe it's so crazy that so many people see the biggest deer to the day, even being in there, as like they're very young hunters. And then I
yeah.
don't know if like some kind of like presence of being young or something, like these big deer just don't care or something, but
It's the
Yeah.
innocence.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Josh, we've talked about this with some other people that if you imagine if you would have shot that deer, right? You
it,
even now at the age
I
you
know.
are, would you have really appreciated it and could you have ever lived up to it? And you would always think it's that easy and you may have not then had the work ethic and the drive to
Yeah,
do what you're doing now because of that, right? It's
I agree
probably a
100%.
blessing. It's probably a blessing that the way it happened that way.
Yeah, it definitely hooked me for life. But I don't think it was, just that deer. Of course, everybody wants to see a big deer or whatever you're hunting, a sizable trophy. It's just being in the woods. It's just the natural primal, like we talk about in our podcast several times. There's this innate inside of, I think, almost every human. I just saw a clip about persistence hunting out of Africa this morning. I reposted actually, and you people talk a lot of things, back and forth about traditional bows versus crossbows versus vertical bows, and people have very um, poignant feelings on what you should and shouldn't be shooting, broadhead out of, or how far to shoot a deer. And so, I guess at the end of the day, my perspective is, if you're doing something that's legal, ethical, and you feel like you can take that doe at 50 yards with that bow, and you have practiced and you can make that shot. I'm not a person to judge that shot. I'm not going to. I've taken shots at deer where I thought the shot placement was perfect, and last second, I mean, I did it on the Watusi in Africa. I don't know if you saw the Watusi where I hit that thing in the entry. It was back big time. And I even knew what I did when I shot. I pulled to watch where the arrow was going. I pulled off the pin. My eye went to the right. I pulled the bow to the left to see where that arrow was going and even knew better. And so this one of those things where fortunately in that situation, the Clovis saved me because I used the mechanical, and the single bevel helical rotation went all the way through. I clipped both lungs in the back of them, and he only went 20 yards. But so even if that shot, it wasn't what I wanted. I think every hunter, as you hunt more and get older in the I guess we say lifestyle, not sport, you start to understand where your limits are as an archer. Where your limits and range. How often do you want to, how long do you want to stay out and hunt? But I think it just happens over time. I think people grow into it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's all about have you practiced at that distance? Have you practiced with that equipment? And confidence in that and the practice goes a long way. What I haven't talked to Joe a whole lot about Triplepoint yet. I've shared some of the links and some of the social
yeah.
media that you do. What got you to that point? What was the deciding factor to jump into that? And then how did you like walk us through a little bit of the origin and the history of where you are from the start till now and
Sure.
how it rolled out? Because some of the concepts specifically of the mechanical are different than some other things on the market. We were talking about that before we got on the call with you here.
Mm-hmm.
But what led you down that path? And let's just talk a little about the origin of that.
Yeah, I think Triple Point, it mostly started out of my love and hate of some mechanical broadheads. I love how they fly. Mechanical broadheads are lasers. They don't win plane. You don't have to tune every broadhead to that specific arrow, and it just kind of, I like fixed blades. Our carnivorous fly really well, but I like mechanical better. What I was frustrated about is every single mechanical seemed to have pre-deployment issues, retention issues. I remember the night I actually came up with the original idea. I'm in my tree stand, my climber on public ground. I'd gotten done teaching, and between work and home, there was a piece of public ground that I had access to. You can get out and get up and be within sand in probably about a half an hour, as quick as you could probably get it. And it was a great spot. I've seen several really large deer there. I actually hit one about 12 years ago, and he stepped forward, and when I let go, he stepped and it hit it back, and I never recovered that deer. but he was an enormous buck. And I sat there and I pulled my arrow out of my quiver, and it was mechanical broadhead, but the blades deployed coming out of my quiver, and I was like, man. So I'm in my tree stand trying to hook them back on and get them to stay in. Then one side would be on the other, and mentally at that point I was almost destroyed because I'm sitting there going, I'm just hoping and praying these things stay on. And then my mind went to, wait a minute, how fast is bow shooting? And I'm like, that's a lot of acceleration. How are those blades going to always stay shut? And then I was watching a hunting show, and the guy was at full draw on a really nice buck. And I remember the camera panned down to the end of the arrow, and then you could literally see one of the blades was down and dangling like this in the air in the breeze right before he released. And I was like, that's not going to go well. And so I thought there's got to be a better way, to retain these stainless steel cutting blades. And my background is mechanical engineering. I did an internship in schooling mechanical engineering before education. And I always loved problems. I always loved to try to solve something more simply. And I think for myself as a whitetail hunter or general bow hunter, all around, I wanted to go backwards in this. And that sounds kind of weird, but I wanted to go back to simplicity. I wanted to find out a way to do it perfectly, as perfect as you can from a broadhead, mechanical broadhead perspective, as far as retention, the blade staying in, not coming out. On the shot, it's going to stay closed. In the air, it stays closed. But then I thought, how can I get it on impact then if it's so retained and perfectly retained? How am I going to make it explosively open? And I thought, rare earth magnets. They were just coming into the industry, just kind of at the forefront of the world at that time. People were they were starting to get into like EV cars, electric cars, with the batteries in them. The lithium ions got big, and then the rare earths are right behind that with wind turbines, that sort of thing. So the application of these really, really small but really strong magnets was reaching. It was starting to reach. And I just so happened to be teaching engineering and robotics, and we covered, I taught chemistry as well. So we covered the periodic table. We covered rare earth magnets and materials like neodymium and that sort of thing. And I got to thinking, man, this would be a really cool application if I could do it, to get these blades to stay perfectly shut without question out of any bow, any speed, any archer, any equipment, and know that every single time I let go of that arrow, it's going to work perfectly every time. And I thought, could I do it? And I thought, I don't know. So that was kind of the initial inception of the idea of embedding or getting these rare earth materials into a broadhead. And that was kind of only the foundation. At that point, I did a lot of research. I started studying broadheads, broadhead design. I looked at different mechanical retention systems, deployment systems, over the top versus mid versus a rear deploy. Why do you do this versus that? Different designs, different materials from an engineering perspective, aluminum versus steel, and the whole gamut of design. And I thought, this is going to take a long time to do. And if people look at a product and they say, man, that's a neat product. I wonder how long it took them to build that. It's taken me 16 years to get to this point with a Clovis.
Wow.
And 16 years of development from the initial inception of the thought to, okay, well, and life happens. You guys know how that happens. Life happens. You're married, you're having kids, you're building houses and getting different jobs and that sort of thing, trying to improve yourself and kind of move through life. But
When
on the
did you
back burner,
ship? When did you ship the first one out? Like the first purchase product was in the package, and you mailed it out to the first customer.
first purchase Clovis broadhead was sold. It would have been 2 years ago in spring. Is when
Okay.
we sold the first one. I actually took the prototypes, and we hunted a big Russian crossbow. My wife and I did in southern Ohio. One of the first big animals we shot it through was a Russian crossbow because of the gristle plates, the shoulders, the thickness, the hide. Want to really see what it do in something super thick and heavy duty. Matter of
And you
fact, when
guys
I took
recorded that. You have that. That's on your social media somewhere. I think. I think I've seen that
Yes,
video.
yes, sir. Yeah, it's in slow mo and regular speed. We have it quite a few places in our video folder. And then along with that day, I also ended up taking a merino ram. And there were two reasons why we shot those particular animals. One, we needed the heavy body of the boar to see what it would do going through. Did it stay open? Did it cut? Did it penetrate all the way through? How fast did it take it down? That sort of thing. And then the other thing was the ram. They have really heavy wool, so the person that actually is the outfitter at first said, I'm not going to let you use mechanicals at all. And I said, well, wait a minute. There's a reason why I'm wanting to do this, and I'll explain it to you. So I took a Broadhead down, took a Clovis down. I showed him. He's kind of an old school guy, and I really like him. Super nice guy. But he was, he was not real happy with some of the other broadheads he's had used, because he said they either don't open, or they partially open, or they take so much energy to open that you don't get penetration. And I thought, ding, 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 because one thing I had that was a real problem with mechanicals was when you shoot the mechanical and it hits an animal, the issue I had was it takes so much energy to deploy. Like, I've actually taken some mechanical broadheads, and you push them, push them, push them, push them, push them to a target, and they won't deploy until you're hitting nearly, 10, 12, 15 pounds of force. Well, that's almost like a catcher's mitt. If you look at some way of some design, if something's absorbing an impact, you're just stealing away your kinetic energy for penetration. And so
So
I
he
thought,
didn't
how
want you to use a mechanical for the same reasons that you wanted to create a new and a better product because of the problems with previous mechanicals, which makes sense.
you're exactly correct. And I knew
Joe's
all
looking
those
at
things.
this. Joe, I put marker on here because
Yeah,
that's my test one that I'm shooting into the broadhead
that's what I
target.
figured.
That's why as well.
So when you think about the idea of how do I get this gentleman to allow me to use this brand new broadhead. It's a prototype. It's not a production model yet. I basically went through and explained to him the magnet, and for some reason the magnet got him, and he's like, "Wait a minute, what are those?" And I said, "Rare earth magnets." And he goes, "Well, I use those on my grain trucks." I guess he has them on the tarps on his grain trucks. So instead of snapping them down, he just uses he actually sews in rare earth magnets, those embeddable sewable ones, and they're on the corner, so he can just snap it on his steel system and go. And so he kind of knew about rare earth magnets already, and he looked at the broadheads. So that's a really cool idea. He's like, you know what? Go ahead and try. I want to see what they do. I want to see what they do. And so I sent one broadhead through both of the animals. I shot through the hog. It blew through that thing. The hog went about 20 yards and piled up. I picked it up. I washed it in a creek, clicked the blades back on the magnet, and then we went and I shot the Merino Ram at 30 yards. And I buckled it in one shot too. And that broadhead with a bolt went clear through the ram down into a valley and stuck in a creek with a luminoc on, thankfully. So got down there and were able to find that LED lighted knock and then locate the broadhead. And from there, it was just test, 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 shoot it, shoot it, shoot it, see what it can and can't do and how much it can actually take. And the outfitter was absolutely astounded. The holes were huge. The animals were down quickly. The broadheads were completely reusable, and they were shocked. And they said, we've never seen a mechanical broadhead do this. And I was happy with his performance. But as an engineering standpoint, or for the engineering standpoint, you're still looking at how then can I continue improving this? And so that led to development of, wait a minute, we can make this thing convertible to a fixed blade or mechanical. And then I said, wait a minute, I can make a special turkey tip to do some things on turkeys that we need to do as archers, because most broadheads you can shoot them with a regular broadhead, but they'll blow right through so fast and they're running forever and you can't get them. And so I designed a special turkey foot tip for a turkey foot mechanical broadhead. And then we actually just launched into something kind of a special project that I haven't really said much about yet, but it's another variation of the broadhead for something fun with turkeys next spring. And you can probably guess what it might be, if you think about what else you might shoot in a turkey to take it out.
Yeah, I think I saw the sneak peek video on one of the social media platforms of stuff you were messing with there. And I
Yeah,
just finished we haven't talked about this yet, but you and a few of your, I don't know if you call them friends or business partners, you're just released episode 4 of the Bowman podcast, which has one of the coolest intros that I think that I've heard. So I
thank you.
really enjoyed that. And they were talking about some archery turkey hunting on episode 3 that I was listening to on the drive over. So that's an interesting story. So people haven't heard that one, go watch the Bowman, and we can talk more about that too. Josh,
Sure.
when did you get into South Africa and going there, and I mean, you've shot the Clovis through some large animals,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
as big or bigger than most anything that we'll shoot in at least the lower 48.
Mhm.
But how did that start, and when did you take that first trip? And then what's the biggest animal that you put the mechanical Clovis through?
So Africa actually was inadvertent. What happened with Africa was I have a field staffer here in Ohio that was shooting a Clovis in his backyard with his kids one night, and it got on social media. I posted it, something to do with it, and a video clip or something. And a gentleman in Africa was on social media and caught the clip and caught the idea of the broadhead design and said, "Wait a minute, I want one of those. I want to try that." And so he contacted me, and I was like, wait a minute, Africa, that seems like a big step from where I'm at right now. And so we actually were able to get him a pack. He shot him around a little bit, loved it. Ended up, I'm trying to remember what he shot first. I can't remember what animal he shot first with it. It was a small, like a deer species or something. I don't know what it was over there, but it wasn't real big. And then we eventually started talking. He's like, well, wait a minute, these would be great broadheads to use in South Africa because they're super durable. And we have really heavy boned animals. Our hides have very thick skin. Our animals are tough. The vitals are forward in a very different place than what our North American animals are. And he said, I think we'd have a big market for these in Africa. And so that was a point where I started exploring getting these to that continent because mostly their seasons, not only are the animals numerous, but their seasons oftentimes go year round. And so it's not a situation where you only have a certain season you're hunting. They can hunt pretty much year round over there all the time in different situations. So then you might have certain rules as to what you have to use a fixed blade in certain areas versus a mechanical. You can't shoot an animal over there with mechanical all over the place. There are certain places where you are required to use a fixed blade, and of course we respect that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, like, because a lot of people, I don't want to call them one tricks. You know what I mean? They have one design and then they're gonna just go this one. If you don't use this design, then you're not doing it right. I mean, you
Right.
guys you cater to the mechanical and then you cater to. I mean, it's just like I really like that the turkey foot blade and all that. I mean,
Thank you.
that and I heard a lot of people this year, they said they smoked a turkey and they never found it.
Yeah.
And I think that would really help people to slow, like you said, slow it down and all
It
that. And
Yeah, it's something that it's a weird tip. I mean, I don't want to call it weird, but it looks pretty nasty when you look at it. But the engineering actually is a whole nother question or design behind it because it looks nasty, but it does even nastier things when it hits because not only is it retentive and it's ripping and tearing, it's also rotating. So it's almost like an apple core. When it hits, it's spinning too as well, and it just does some unbelievable damage. I shot a ostrich in Africa at 60 yards with a Raven R500. And it you'll see it on the episode of Hunt Tech when they get it edited and ready for Carbon TV this winter. You'll get to see that impact, but I can still hear the thud. Like it was a nasty impact, and it went through the bird, no issues. The biggest bird on Earth, and within a couple of seconds of my impact on that bird, it was just leak city. I mean, there was blood flowing readily out of that bird very quickly, and it was down in about 100 yards. And if you know anything about even turkeys, they're super tough. Like even ostrich,
right.
I was shocked because they're like this thing's gonna go. It's hit hard, but it's still gonna go a bit because they're so tough. And I was shocked at how tough ostrich are.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah,
So you I think it's good for the listeners to know too that a lot of this you're trying to shoot your broadhead and the Clovis through all different types of bows, whether it's a crossbow, whether it's a compound,
Mhm.
largely for testing, so people can see that, so they know that that single broadhead can be used for all different types of archery and hunting. Whereas some of the other brands, you'll see specifics of this is only for crossbow or this is
Mhm.
only for a compound. Why is that? And what's the difference of why they have to have two separate products for that? I'm assuming it's based on the speed that it's shooting and the velocity that's coming out of the bow with, versus the Clovis
Yeah,
that
the,
can
the
that you can shoot through. I haven't attempted it, but that you've shot the same broadhead through all different types.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't. That's the greatest thing about why I chose, well, rear deploy for two reasons, but I'll go back a little bit further than when I was going to go back when I was going to start talking. I want to go back to the design of the broadhead because it wasn't as far as the penetration of this broadhead. That's what initially got me to design it. Was I wanted penetration because I've had several very large white-tailed deer that I made good shots on. I knew it was a good impact site. I knew the shot placement was correct, and I watched that arrow get maybe 5 inches of penetration and pop back out my side on the entry side, and I'm going, wait a minute, there's why? And I started realizing there's so much energy in some of these mechanicals to open. You're halfway in the deer before that mechanical is even all the way open and deployed. Um, or you're actually looking at flight issues. One big thing with some mechanicals versus mine, and I guess I would, when I talk to people about the Clovis, the first thing I tell them is, hey, I always approach this from an engineering perspective. This is not a Josh Miller Triplepoint making a marketing sales pitch to people to buy my broadhead. This is a Josh Miller mechanical engineering background. I want the sucker to perform for hunters. And so, even myself, when I'm out hunting, I got to shoot my first buck with Clovis Mechanical this year. And it was so enjoyable because I was at full draw. He was 15 yards away, didn't know I was there. I grunted him in. He was mad. He was ready to find somebody and fight, and I got to send that broadhead without even worrying about any pre-deployment, any issue at all, right through that deer, and he only made it about 40 yards. But the initial inception of the Clovis was two things: one, perfect blade retention. How do I do it? Two, perfect opening when it impacts. How do I do it? And then, of course, number three is perfect. Well, I guess there's a lot of laundry lists here, but I wanted it to fly perfectly. And I wanted it to outperform penetration wise almost any other broadhead I could possibly go up against and get animals on the ground for the hunter. So the whole idea of this was built off of the Ed Ashby penetrative studies. If you guys are familiar with the Ed Ashby Foundation, he wrote volumes, and you've probably seen some of these, I'm sure, if you haven't come across them, volumes of journals that I had read before designing the broadhead on arrow penetration out of Africa. So really, what you said is, where did Africa come from? It kind of started with him. And all his heavy bone penetration studies in Africa with the single bevel technology. Why single bevel versus double? What's the advantages? Why do you want it to rotate helically and going through? Can I get a mechanical broadhead to be single bevel and work and not twist or break apart? Because I had plenty of people tell me, hey, you'll never be able to do it because that single bevel is just going to twist and it can't, there's no way you're going to get it to rotate and hold together. And so, we went with super thick blades, some of the thickest blades in mechanical on the market, single bevel sharpening. So the edges are sharp, but also sturdy. A lot of guys have this misnomer where they want double bevel, surgically scalpel sharp blades. Well, what happens is they roll when they hit bone, and those edges, they're sharp for sure. But when they hit a bone and they're double bevel and they're super thin, the blades the edges roll. They roll, they get dull.
They're pretty much disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They become the one shot wonders. And, any broadhead will work when shot placement's correct. And I agree with that. But we actually just had a person the other day tell me, he's like, well, I made a kind of a bad shot this year. And he's telling me about his buck he harvested. And he's like, it went 60 yards. And he's like, and I'm like, well, where'd you hit it? He's like, well, when I let go, it turned and I hit it in the rear end. And I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, it went through the hip and hit the femur. And I think it deflected off the femur and went up inside and did some other damage. But I've had many, people tell me that if they had not shot a deer with a Clovis, they probably wouldn't be recovering that deer because things happen sometimes. And it's not always the archer's fault. Sometimes there's an environmental condition or something happens. I mean, I remember one buck I shot with a crossbow. I had the limb too close to the tree, and when it shot, the limb deflected off the tree and came back at me, and I got the deer. I made a decent shot on it, but it wasn't the placement I wanted it to be. And so when I designed the Clovis, I thought, I got to get these blades to stay completely closed all the time. I want to fly perfectly. I want to open perfectly on impact, and I want to out penetrate anything I can possibly go up against and be single bevel. I was really, really big on being able to make it single bevel because of the advantages of going through bone and having it wedge and break open bone going through. We had a guy last September. He actually center punched a rib on an elk at 30 yards, and he said it sounded like a baseball bat when it hit the rib. And I'm telling you, there's pictures on our website of it. He hit both lungs, but the amount of blood that instantly went out of that entry hole was kind of ridiculous. And it put that elk down in about 30, 40 yards. So I think overall, I've tried to design, anything that's mechanically designed. I think what I saw happen with the broadhead industry is it was getting more and more and more complex. Companies were looking at, how do we get rid of bands and collars? That was, the next step that companies are all kind of working on is how do we get rid of these bands and collars and get rid of rubber bands and silicone bands and any collars and that sort of thing. And what I saw happen was the industry just got more complex. They took something mechanically more complex than a fixed blade already and made it even more complex and even in my mind more questionable when it comes to pre-deployment, blades doing weird things, repeatable, durable, that sort of thing. So I wanted to engineer the Clovis to be a completely different mechanical broadhead or broadhead all the way around. And I think when people first see it, they go, well, that's kind of a cool idea. I wonder how it works. And I've had so many people say, I wonder if it'll actually open on impact. And I literally want to tell them, I don't say anything now because they'll find out when they shoot it, but I just want to tell them, like, it has to open. There's nothing holding it back. The magnet is a 1 pound magnet. It's actually 0.75. And on the wing blades and the wing butts, because of lever action, it takes 3 pounds to open it. So what you have is, when you're in Africa, and we'll get to see this when we're hunting together. There's bush and brush everywhere, and as so many guys say, the mechanical broadheads, they'll get caught on stuff and open up or pre-deploy or do something weird. And with a Clovis, you don't have to worry about that. Once it's locked, it's there. You can actually screw it on an arrow and shake that arrow back and forth as hard as you want. Those blades aren't going to open on you.
You said something a second ago about perfect shot. Most broadheads are going to work, right? And I think when I started doing a lot more research is when Mike invited me with Trees in Hunt Tech Pro and Triplepoint to Africa, and I started doing a lot of. I'm a physical therapist by background, healthcare, anatomy's like my thing. So I started looking at organ placement, and the diaphragm is so much further forward or anterior on these animals that your room for error, if you're trying to, the typical whitetail double lung, behind the shoulder, that's a bad shot on a lot of these animals. You're essentially,
Yeah.
third of the way up, and you're hitting that vital V, but you're a lot closer to the heavy bone structure on much larger animals. And in some of these animals are also still they're large, but the quick twitch is insane, and they move a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that you have to plan for plan B in that situation of hitting bone, which is why I think I sent you a Facebook message and said, hey, which of these are single bevel? And your response was all of them. And in my head, I started thinking, I don't know that I've seen a mechanical that was single bevel. And I started asking myself the same question that you did and started doing more research on it. I didn't realize a lot of it was founded in some of the research by Dr. Ashby, from penetration to FOC to arrow weight to all of that, which is then you and I started messaging back and forth about what you're shooting and what I'm shooting and what we're going to do together there in July, which we're only it's crazy that I think we're like 5 or 6 weeks away from flying out.
I know.
Not looking forward to that 15-hour flight, but I'm sure I'm sure I'll be jacked when I get there. So yeah, that was interesting for me as I started looking into the single bevel and trying a bunch of different broadheads and excited to be able to use this. Um, you went to Africa earlier this year, right?
Yes, sir. March. Yeah.
Okay, so you were there in March. What did you put the Clovis through when you were there?
Oh boy. So, the first thing was, it was kind of challenging because that time of year, which I didn't totally think about. I know it's opposite hemisphere and all. Star seasons are opposite, but I didn't think about the fact that there's going to be so much green browse. The animals would be eating leaves and green stuff. They didn't really come into the alfalfa. Like, the hides were there, but they didn't have to. There was so much to eat. They would kind of casually stroll in and get a bite here or there. But as far as like water and food, there was plenty of it around. So we did a lot of spot stock. It was kind of different compared to probably what we'll do. I'm saying next month, because next month they'll come in. They'll need food because it's winter there, so they'll want to come in and get food and water and get a drink. And we'll have the opportunity to sit and hide a lot more than I did. So we did a lot of spot stock. I think the first animal I took was a baboon. They're all over the place. They're interesting little critters. They're aggressive. They're fast. They can be nasty. They like to rip like Wi-Fi cables off houses and tear things up that way.
They're essentially
Um,
over there a nuisance animal. They're like how we think about hogs in the South. They just destroy everything, and it's
mhm.
kind of open season all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a fun first experience to hunt one of those. And then after that, I think I shot a wildebeest and blew through that, and then actually two, and then that was the same day. And then after that, I think the next animal I hunted was, I think, the kudu, if I remember right. Try to put all these together. Oh no, sorry, it was impala. I had an impala jump me horribly bad the first night I was in Africa. He was at 30 yards, completely aware because there's a jackal that came in. And so not only is this impala at full attention, and they're, like lightning fast, you guys have seen them, but he was also flipping out and really concerned about this jackal. And so while being broadside at 30 yards, my PH Johan's like, hey, now's the time. Let's let one rip at this thing. And I had, that full draw, I had the pin on it. And the bow I was using probably isn't the fastest bow in the world, this vertical bow I was using, but it can get the job done at that distance. And I took it over with me. When I let go, the Impala actually turned, and we're pretty certain that that thing actually saw the arrow coming at it. That's how fast they are. It actually could see the arrow while it's coming at it, or the fletching or something, or motion. and it dropped a good 18 inches. And I went back and reviewed my footage. I think I posted it too. My shot placement was good, but the thing dropped so far, you can see the arrow arc right over its back. And we found the Luminoc, and about 10 minutes later, is glowing nicely. It was starting to get a little bit dim at that point in time. But that was my first experience at a lightning fast Impala in Africa, and it taught me a big lesson. And I think that lesson is two things: speed. You want your boat to have, of course, speed to get there before it can react. But number two, they're just so darn fast. You have to anticipate them dropping. And I anticipated them, being like a whitetail and dropping like a whitetail deer. But to get that Impala on the ground, I probably would have had to hold at least at the very bottom of his brisket, at belly, like very, very low. And, my mind wasn't there at that time. I think if I'd have held there, I'd been okay. But luckily, he came back in 2 nights later, made a real bad mistake. Came back in after there were some females, I think, dozed around the area. I think it was 2 nights later, and he came to a salt block, and he was only 15 yards from me in salt block. And while he was quartering to, I had that night taken the Raven R500 with me. And so he wasn't going to have enough time to react and move out of the way of that bolt this time. And it did a good job. It went clear through from front right shoulder through the whole body, exited the hip, went back in exited in front of the hip, went back in the hip, and then out again, and just kept on sailing. So that Impala didn't make it about 20, 30 yards. I shot a cow kudu. That was, I think, the last animal I harvested at the first place we were at. And then the second place, I shot a bull kudu, a really nice bull kudu, which was a lot of fun. I shot, trying to think of the other things. What else did I? Oh, the Watusi. Of course, you probably saw the large Watusi I shot, and I shot that with a mechanical to see actually on the body size on the animal that big. It's a lot of people question, why you shoot a Watusi in Africa? Well, number one, the opportunity was there, and number two, the Watusi body was actually bigger than a Cape Buffalo. So what it allowed me to do was put a spot stock on something that probably wasn't going to kill me, but could have killed me before I spot stocked something that absolutely wanted to murder me, which is a Cape Buffalo. And so we put a mechanical through the Watusi, and it didn't go 20 yards, and so we were really happy. And then at that point, the last animal I hunted was that Cape Buffalo, and the morning we finally got on them really well. We spent about 2 days spot stalking these things because they sound like thunder when they run. Because as a herd, Cape Buffalo don't run around anything; they just run through it. And so you can't, there's no way I would sit in a blind and hunt Cape Buffalo because they would just wheel and mow you down. And so we spot stalked within 30 yards. And so the last morning we got up and we had one more shot to get it. We remember we got to the truck. It's misty, it's foggy, it's not that light out, and we're hunting Cape Buffalo. And I'm like, just looking around like, is this really what we should be doing right now? And I always remember the location of these Cape Buffalo. We're in the Bucky, which is the truck with the elevated seating in the back. And I look to my right by this pond, and there's some bush and stuff, and there's the sun rising, and I can't see much because it's so foggy. And then I see a silhouette of a very dark black, large, nasty looking thing with horns, and I'm like, they're right there. And so we located them. We were able to get off the Bucky and get within a range of a shot. And then I put a 100 grain mechanical Clovis helicut broadhead through a Cape Buffalo, and it took it down.
Wow.
So that's by far the biggest animal I've shot with the mechanical broadhead. But by far, people are probably astounded by that the most because they're like, "You shot what with what?" And I said, "Yeah, it was a 100 grain broadhead." And some people, they have this misnomer of I got to go to Africa and take a 1,000 grain spear with me going 5,000 feet per second. And I'm like, no, you really don't. You just need a broadhead that's going to perform and do what you need to do at the time of impact. And fortunately, I was able to put one through a Cape Buffalo with a Raven. I did use an R500. So the outfitter was very suggestive that I use a bow with enough power, which is 500 feet per second is probably going to do it to get through that Cape Buffalo.
What vertical bow were you shooting earlier in the trip?
I took a Bowtech Revolt, an 80-pound Revolt with me.
Okay.
That's what I shot the Watusi with, was that 80-pound Revolt. And I think I clocked it on the chronograph at 303. So,
Okay. Is that what
yeah.
you're taking in July?
Kind of funny you asked that. So in July, I'm actually taking a new Prime Revix. We're able to work with some people, including Paul Romano Outdoors. and Prime has been getting him some inline bows and also some Revix models. And the one big thing that I try to do, and that's something that you've probably noticed, shoot the Clovis out of all bows. You're going to see it actually pretty soon. You're going to see it probably next week out of a traditional bow. Wolf Paw Archery is sending a traditional bow custom made, and I'll be learning how to shoot a trad bow, which I've never shot in my life, and I can't wait to learn. I'm excited about it. I'll probably screw it up, lose a bunch of arrows, and mess some things up, but it's going to be a lot of fun learning. And I try to, as much as I can, want to show people it's not there are so many specific broadheads, and you're right, Mike. Crossbow broadheads at certain feet per second, and I wanted to be able to give someone something where I don't care if you're say an older person with little knowledge on different types of bows, you can screw this thing on an arrow and it's going to perform for you. And so it doesn't matter if you're a female, male, archer, crossbow, trad, vertical bow, bow fishing, spear gun. I've been approached to use this design for like spear fishing on spear guns underwater because it won't pre-deploy. Being that it's underwater, when it's launched, the blades won't hit that medium interface, and so they won't pre-deploy at all.
Yeah, I try to be like a realist, like, because like I tell some people, like, if you ever go out west, or if you're in Africa, and then let's just say you have some collars and you fall and you deploy all your collars and you don't have no extra deploy, like, what are you gonna do? You're done. You're done. You're
You're
done.
done.
So,
Yeah.
so like yours being a magnet, like, just say it happens to pre-deploy. What do? You just push it back in, and
Yeah.
then
You're
it's just
yeah. You're
you're
done.
set. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're just eliminating one problem that could go wrong, and it's a very real problem. Like like you said, like it happened with one of your first deer ever. The collar came off and you shot it, and that could have been the difference between hitting or not. You don't know.
I
Mhm.
appreciate you mentioned earlier that to solve the problem of the collars, some other groups tried to make it more complex, which in my mind, more complex means more things to go wrong. So I appreciate the simplicity of it, which I think Joe is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Josh, when we go to Africa this July, what's on your list? Right, you got a chance to harvest some pretty cool animals in
Yeah.
Africa earlier this year, but what's on your list when we go in July?
I'll tell you, everyone asks me that all the time. And when I first went over there, I didn't really ever have a list. I didn't know what I wanted to shoot. And so I think that sometimes is the best thing to do, because when you get in the environment and you start talking to people and learning different things, then you kind of formulate. I think the plan naturally, organically evolves as to what you want to, go after. My first, interest in Africa was getting this thing through as many animals as I can, especially big boned animals for data purposes, data driven purposes. But then also, I got to the point where I just didn't think about it anymore. I just had fun hunting. And so when someone came in, I had a zebra several times in my sights at 20, 30 yards. One was pregnant, so didn't want to do that, of course. The male wouldn't come in, and he kind of stay back. And so I haven't harvested a zebra yet, and so zebra is on my list. I'd like to take a zebra. My
What
wife made
about this concession we're going to, I think, is known for world-class sables and some large sables. Is that on your list?
Yeah, sables are on my list for sure. Yeah, sables are absolutely beautiful. They're just any animal in Africa is gorgeous. I would say for me, a lot of guys they want to get this big of one or they want this one, they want a bigger one next time. I don't really care. I want to have a great hunt. And
They're
so
all going to
when I'm
look awesome. They're all going to
yeah,
look awesome.
yeah,
And
like I don't know where I'm going to put them. My shop, the walls right now are getting kind of filled with whitetail stuff. And so I told my wife, I'm like, these things are huge when they get here in the crate, at some point late summer, probably this summer. I'm like, I need more shop space. So I think a gemsbuck is probably on my list. I like to hunt a gemsbuck. I would like to hunt a sable. I would like to probably take a zebra, and then maybe here and there, maybe hunt a baboon again, depending. Oh, a warthog, for sure, a warthog. That's on my list too.
Yeah. So, like, obviously you enjoy Africa, but like the negatives, like people like
Hmm.
think of Africa, they just think it's a kill frenzy area and all that. So if anybody was on the fence, like, what would you say to them to convince them to like be more open minded, or just
Yeah.
like, because they just don't know. Like, I've never been there, but I've like seen like videos and all that of like that's the way of life out there, and it's kind of amazing.
tell you what, it's an amazing continent. I think what I would say to that, because I've been approached with that quite a lot, and I've been approached two different ways. Some people say, Josh, why'd you go to Africa? You can hunt all those animals in Texas. And I said, I know, but you don't get the experience of Africa. And the other thing is, I love to hunt in Texas for sure. But the thing about Texas is versus Africa, when you go to Africa, because the currency and the governments are so different between America and Africa, and our dollar is so worthwhile over there and so valued compared to their rand, you're able to hunt a lot more animals for less costs over there. So while the plane ticket's kind of expensive and the ride is a long ride, if you do hunt Africa, you can hunt a lot of animals in a short period of time. And so it's not like our whitetail hunting here. So when they come to hunt whitetail with me in the fall, it's going to be, of course, in Ohio, no fences, open lands, that sort of thing. And you may or may not shoot a big buck. We all know that. That just happens, and that's part of hunting. But over in Africa, you will see animal after animal. Just like the sheer number is unbelievable to a
It's like
hunter.
a bow hunter's paradise. People think that
Yeah.
this is what you want to do as you become more experienced, and I've only been back into the archery world for a couple of years, and everything I've looked at, it's actually better for those that are trying to get more repetition and trying to shoot more and want that experience. So being in healthcare, I'm all about research, and I was looking up some research in different parts of the continent, and more in Africa than even in the States. Hunting, as far as an economic value, is better for conservation there than what we think about even here, because
Yep.
there's certain parts of Africa that they outlawed hunting, and what happened is all the animals were cleared off the landscape. They were all poached because they no longer have a monetary value to these landowners. So they're essentially killing them off because
Mm-hmm.
they're eating other crops, they're doing other things. The parts of South Africa specifically where hunting and these concessions and the professional hunters and the PH, you are supporting the entire economy from the skinners to the trackers.
Mm-hmm.
Every piece of those animals is used. The meat gets donated to the local tribes, to the people that are working at these concessions. But without hunting in South Africa or in Africa at all, these animals would be wiped off the landscape and be extinct because they no longer have monetary value. So that is the only reason there is conservation in Africa or throughout South Africa, at least from a lot of the research that I've seen in different parts of Africa and specifically in South Africa. And there's a lot of good information out there. So if people are questioning that, not that I think the listeners of this podcast are probably those that are going to be questioning it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's really unique. We talk about that in the States of I forget the amount, but most of the dollars of conservation come from license sales and come from the hunting community and the outdoor community. And that's why we have so much public land in different parts of the country. But in Africa, it's tenfold that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right, and I think you mentioned earlier. You said, what would you say to people that are on the boat or on the fence, or I should say, not on the boat to go over there? And I would say, don't listen to anybody. Do your own research. I don't. When people said, "Why are you going over there?" It's dangerous. Well, any place, walking across a floor with a pencil up in there is dangerous. I had the absolute lifelong dream hunt going over there that I'll remember the rest of my life. And it's like any whitetail hunt you have here that's memorable. It's like a Rolodex file. Maybe I'm aging myself saying Rolodex here, but you can go back in that memory and you remember the smells, you remember the temperature, you remember what the deer was doing. And for the rest of my life, not only do I get to watch it on video because we have them, but those are memories I will always have and I would never turn down. So if I have a chance to hunt anywhere, I'm going because you get one life. My philosophy is we have one shot at this life, and Africa does it a way that's different than the United States. 99% of people, of outfitters, have fences, and they have to. I respect why they have fences. They have fences because if they didn't, people would poach all the animals and take them and sell the meat. And so they have fences, even though they're like 3 to 5,000 acre tracts of land. So as far as the hunting goes, you're hunting like you would hunt anywhere around here. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Mohican State Forest here in Ohio that I public hunt on quite a bit is about 4,000 acres. The one outfitter that I hunted in Africa was also about 4,000 acres. And you never see a fence unless you're looking for it, unless you drive up to the edge of the property. So, that being said, people I think have a somewhat uneducated view on hunting Africa and think it's, bad or dangerous or we shouldn't shoot the animals. And quite honestly, you're right. Shooting and hunting the animals keeps the animals alive, and conservation of the land and animals actually helps protect them more than not hunting would.
Yeah. So, uh, to like branch out to another venture of you guys, and actually a new venture. You guys started your own kind of podcast series and all that. So you want to dive deep into that?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
talk about the guys and how that group came together because it's kind of
Okay.
a unique group of individuals.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Paul Romano of Romano Outdoors kind of had the initial idea to start a podcast. I guess he'd always wanted to. And knowing me, and again, he's been on board with Triplepoint and the Clovis Broadhead designs. It's 2.5, 3 years ago is when I think I first met him, but he's always been on board what I was doing and very interested in it. And so he's like, well, let's get this podcast together because I'm starting my outdoor archery shop here in Virginia. I'm gonna be opening up this, Ramon Outdoors archery shop. You've got Triplepoint, you've got the Clovis. He's like, could I be the only brick and mortar place in the country to sell these? And I said, sure, why not? Because we're doing online web sales. If you saw the news today, you probably saw that many companies are pulling their stores out of brick and mortar places because they're losing so much revenue because people are doing business online. And so what this allows us to do is go from our shop direct to consumer to your mailbox with as many broadheads as you want, and you're not driving anywhere to buy them. It's quicker for us. It's quicker to you. You can get back with me and ask me questions about performance or what you need to do or locked mode and that sort of thing. So I think the idea of going to online web sales from a lot of retail components is pretty interesting. That
Josh,
being
to highlight that, we can order stuff on Amazon and different places, but most of it isn't made in the US. This is a product that you can get on and order online and can come to your doorstep, but it's made right there in Ohio, correct?
Yeah, yeah, you are so correct in that. We don't have a package that says quote unquote assembled in America because when you see that on a lot of packages, what that means is they are outsourcing all the components in China or Mexico or some other country where they can find things to be made cheaper and then ship them in and build them here. We are 100% made in Ohio, from magnets here in the States to ferrules from Worcester, Ohio, stainless steel from the country to the laser cutter here in Mount Vernon, Ohio. 100% of this broadhead is made in the United States with U.S. materials.
So sorry, back to the Bowman and how the group came together with Paul and everybody else.
Yeah, so Paul does have these at his shop in Romano Outdoors in Virginia, but you have Paul Romano who's on there, of course myself from Triplepoint, and then Cedric and Caleb. They're a little bit younger guys. They have younger families. I don't think Cedric has any kids at all yet with he and his wife, but they actually came on board just out of their sheer love of hunting, their content that they make, and they were already in the industry. So Caleb had some industry experience already with some stabilizer companies and I think some site companies. Cedric kind of just got into it, but he loves the content creation end. And then there's Troy from Greenlight Outdoors, who is a personal friend I know here in Ohio. Met him again through Triplepoint and starting the Clovis. He ran across online and loved the design. And so I met Troy from Greenlight probably about a year ago. We sat down at a BW3s and had lunch, and we just talked about life in general. And he was actually in the military, and he had, I think, just maybe gotten out. He actually retired from the military now. But of course, he started his own outdoor Facebook page, and has a love of hunting as well. And so the greatest part about it is that for me, the diversity of backgrounds that we have, from engineering to business to teaching to military to Cedric's a policeman, he's a cop. So we just have so many different varied backgrounds, but then we have that common love of bow hunting. And so while we have a lot of good banter back and forth and a lot of good information to talk about, we also have, at the end of the day, have that common love of the sport and the hunt.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely love it. Like when because like people always say, "Oh, another hunting podcast." Oh, you know what I mean? I love it, man, because like there's not like more. There's more than one scenario in everybody's books. I mean, a lot of my friends hunt around here to listen. They go, okay, they're giving this, and then like, well, now I can listen to you guys and know Ohio. I can hunt Ohio and all that, and then like, everybody's book is different. There is no golden pill. I can't tell you,
No.
hey, go there, go the hinges, and then hunt the edges or something, whatever. So
Yep.
it's awesome to like get other people, perspective and all that too. So I love it, man. I hope like the industry keeps booming and more podcasts and more people get together. And like I met some of I think 90% of all my friends are related to the podcast or in the hunting industry themselves.
I,
I
yeah,
kind of like just wean myself away from just outside world.
yeah,
You know, Josh,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm 3.5 episodes into the Bowman, and for those that haven't listened to it, you know, most people that are listening to this podcast on Generations know the reason why you started it and trying to get more people into the outdoors and getting kids involved. The Bowman, as you talk through that, it talks a lot about real life and trying to manage family and work and hunting and this passion that we all have. And you talk about you know, getting kids involved in a lot of your social posts. I feel like either your personal page or Triplepoint has kids in it and shooting bows and really a family perspective. Everything from mental health to fitness to hunting to archery to relationships in general. So I think it's very relatable for people in all different aspects of that and different struggles that we all have when October rolls around for us here in Michigan and archery season opens, and then you grind it out. And how do you balance the love and the passion and for you, right, your job as well, combined
Mhm.
with making sure you're not neglecting family responsibilities at the same time. And I know you
Absolutely.
guys have only released the fourth one, and I'm sure there's more to come on that. But I think that's what's tied me into it, and when it comes out, why I want to listen, because that's a real struggle that I have in November, right? How do I drive
Yeah.
an hour away to the hunting property I have in Alabama from where I live in Georgia, and then get back home at a decent time and be there for the family? So I think that's a unique
Yeah.
aspect of it, and a lot of hunting podcasts don't cover that as much as I hope and think that Bowman will.
Well, I think one big thing about me myself, anyways, personally, I can speak on is, I think people have a hard time being real sometimes. And us guys, we're guys, right? We have pride. We have a bit of an ego. We want to show people that we're okay, and but no, life you got to go through together with others. You got to figure out what works for you and how you fit that dynamic in. Like you said, how do I balance my hunting time and not feel bad? Because I'll tell you right now, here's something that's going to pull on everyone's strings even right now. I'll bet you guys have done this too. Do you have kids? You
Yeah.
guys have children? Okay.
Yep.
So this is going to definitely hit home. So I can't, I wonder how many times have you guys sat in a tree stand and you're not seeing a deer and you sit there and go, I should literally be at home with my kids right now. What am I doing? Like I want to hunt so bad, but I have tons of things I could be doing with my kid right now or doing this. And that dad guilt's huge.
Mhm.
And I'm the first person to admit it. I love hunting like anybody else, but if I can get my kids involved, okay, then it will work. Like my son, he shot his first deer this year. And I don't know exactly where he's at with hunting, but he seemed to like it. At least I don't know. He was into the killing part. I don't know what is. He was pretty excited about it, but he was out there ready to go again, and he wanted to go turkey hunting this spring. And so I think he went out maybe once in the turkey blind, but he wasn't so much into that. My daughter may not ever bow hunt. She loves to target shoot. She likes to shoot targets and doesn't really have interest in taking an animal and harvesting one. And as a dad, I'm okay with that. It's totally okay. Like I tell people all the time, the person Josh Miller in Triplepoint, I always say, and this is something I'll hashtag, Triplepoint is for a love of hunting and for a love of people. And I'll tell you what, that includes all people. If you're a hunter and you would come bow hunt with me, come on in the blind, let's hang out and do some bow hunting, because that's, I guess, at the end of the day, what it's all about.
Yeah, I last year I had my best season to date, shot multiple bucks across 3 different states. But the most memorable part of the season was I took at the time my 5-year-old daughter out, and it was with a gun, and she first time she ever sat with me, and she's sitting in the blind, and she's got her ear protection on, and watching her face when the first doe came out. And we busted a couple does, and she helped me bring them in, and then we processed them together. That whole aspect of it was by far the most memorable moment, even though it was a couple does versus
Yeah.
last year I shot the biggest buck that I've shot with my bow, and first time I've shot a buck across multiple states. But that moment with her in the blind was by far the best experience. So I feel you there.
Yeah, totally. I think it's those connections that keep you drawn in and keep you going, trying to pass it on to the next generation, trying to pass on the love and interest in archery. And so, with the platform that I am fortunate to have here at Triple Point, I want to continue trying to do that. Is just, it's not really about the broadhead for me. It's not really. I like the Clovis. I really like it. I designed it. I should like it, right? But it's not really about the broadhead. It's about making those connections. And even this is hard for us to do, as an outdoor industry, we've got to do a better job. And I'll say it. I'm a new person entering the industry, right? I understand this, but we have to do a better job at making that bridge between non-hunters and hunters, because when we keep that rift wider and keep widening it with our position of well, hey, why don't you just eat a big steak? It's like, if you're a non-hunter or you don't eat meat, I'm okay with that. That's just more meat for me. Why should it bother me? It doesn't bother me at all. And matter of fact, I'll sit down and talk with you, and I'll share with you why I hunt. And I guarantee you, I've never had a person yet that I sat down with and talk with them. I've never had them at the end of the conversation. If they were an anti-hunter, I've never had them be upset. If anything, they've actually understood more why I hunt. So
Yeah, I really don't like that's what I tell everybody about like this podcast. Like we don't do it for a monetary gain. We don't do like we just want to like record everything and like let people know like it's never too
sorry,
late. No, you're good.
dog's fired up back here.
No. Like it's never too late or it's never too early to get into the woods and all that. I mean, it's just like if I'll do 1,000 episodes and if it gets one new person in the woods, it's all worth it to me, and that's all I do
Absolutely,
it for. So I mean, because
100%.
like I was like I hunted a little bit when I was younger, like nothing like super hardcore, and then like I got really into it in my like early 20s maybe, and I really like I was like looking back, I go, man, I kind of missed a really good like part of hunting, and like it kind of like I kind of now I can't imagine my life without it. So I just want to show people like because there's a lot of people like I work with some people in like the Metro Detroit area and stuff, and like you tell them hunting and they ask you questions and you're like, what? Why? What do you mean? Like,
Right,
it was, it's like, and, but then they just don't want to know. They don't understand. So it's like, I think it's our job to let them know, we're not saying, hey, you have to go hunt, but like, hey,
right.
educate these people and like maybe they'll get the common interest and all that. And like you said, invite them, you know what I mean? Like if you don't,
Mhm.
you never hunted before, just come in the blind. Don't even bring a
Try it
gun.
out.
Just
Right.
come if you don't like it, whatever, whatever. I'll buy some.
Yeah.
You get some snacks and beer, or whatever. But I mean, like they just don't know, like
Yeah.
until you try it.
Josh, I don't know if I heard this
Yeah.
on the Bowman or if it was on a different hunting podcast, but that somebody said, "Well, why do you do this or why do you go out?" And the response was, "When's the last time you saw the sunrise and when's the last time you saw the sunset? Because every day during hunting season, I get to see both, and that's a sense of peace, and that's almost like it's almost spiritual at a point too. That's
Yeah.
yes, do I love the chances that I actually get to put a deer on the ground or another animal on the ground and process it and know where the meat comes from and put it in the freezer? Yes, but also that's the one time where for me and a lot of others, you can just shut everything else out. And you hear the woods wake up, you hear the birds start chirping, you watch the sunrise. Not very many people are up early enough to see that and experience it, or are present enough in the moment to see it in the evening and watch that occur with no other distractions around. And there's a part of that that's I mean, I don't know how many times I sat last year, but then even though I had a successful season, there were a lot of sits where I didn't see anything or
Mhm.
I didn't shoot anything, but I still had a great time being there because of all of that.
Oh, 100%. I think, and like you said, that common thread of just loving the outdoors. And you said, you're sitting there, you're hearing the environment. It literally becomes almost spiritual. I would agree with you 100%. I think anybody that's ever hunted or has gone out and likes nature at all, which I think all of us have a part that we enjoy nature. I think every human on the planet has that in them. Whether you're going to hunt or not is a question, I think, for the individual and up to you. But I think that, innately within us, we all enjoy just getting out in nature, resetting away from electronics. Or if you have your electronics with you, you're trying not to be on too much. Because I know even like my son, he's in the blind and he has his iPad. I totally admit that he has his iPad with him. It's kind of a modern day thing. I try to minimize as much as I can with him being in the blind with it. But he
You
loves
also need him to
nature.
stay. You also need him to stay quiet and still for 2 hours. So there's a
Yeah,
conflict there.
yeah. There's good moderation there. I think when you have kids and technology and that sort of thing. But we try as much as we can on the Bowman to hit on those things and just like I said, be real, be transparent, share. life things as well as hunting things. We'll talk engineering, we'll talk meat processing, we'll talk, this and that. But they're all real relevant topics, and we try to keep it as good hearted banter as possible. And we have some disagreements on the podcast as far as, some people don't like crossbows, some people do, some people have never shot a traditional bow. I really have never shot traditional bows, but I'm about to, and I'm looking forward to learning it. And so, when I went to Africa, like you said, that appreciation of nature, um, I'll get to remember every hunt the rest of my life, because I can go back and play that memory in my mind, and smell the smell of the morning air, and riding the truck at 7 a.m. in the morning, and you can see the sun rising over a mountain in Africa. Who gets to see that kind of stuff, And so I know that I've been fortunate to do it. I look forward to doing again with, you next month, and Treason, and Hunt Tech as well. And just, you kind of develop this natural friendship, even if you don't know people super well. What you all know well is the love of hunting, and so that natural interest kind of draws people together, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this past weekend, I went up to TAC and all that, and we had like, I known them for a little bit, but I did not know these guys. If I'd never hunted before, I would never know these guys. And I stayed in a room full of 10. I think five of them were complete strangers. I'd never met them until that weekend. But by the end of the weekend, we were all best friends and we all
Yeah,
talk and all that. I mean, it's just crazy how like
yeah,
passionate some of these people you meet, and then you go the common interest that like can bring people together so quick and so fast. And you just I've never had a really negative experience with another hunter, like outside of public land stuff. But like, but like, I, but other than that, I mean, it's crazy how this this industry is like it seems so big sometimes, but it's actually like super small, and this community is
it is.
it's super caring and
Yeah.
all that, and it's super awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Many more people know me than I know them at this point, and just through Triplepoint and the Broadhead. People are like, I was on a plane. I was on. Here's a funny story. I was on the plane to Africa, right? Riding on the plane, a guy is sitting beside me, 2 seats over in the aisle seat, and he's with his wife, and they're going to watch, I think, his daughter in a horse show or something. And he's like, "Oh, so what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, flying to Africa." He's like, "What are you doing in Africa?" I was like, "Hunting." He's like, "Well," he's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "Well, I own a broadhead company." He's like, "Well, what is it?" And I told him. He's like, "No." He's like, "You don't." I said, "He's like, no, you don't own Triplepoint." I said, "Yeah." He's like, He's like, "I know that broadhead already." And I'm going, how did
Eh,
how did I get that? How did I get that much reach with this guy? I think he might live in Virginia or something. Maybe he saw it through Paul Romano. I have no idea. I still don't know. But then I was talking with him. We had a good friendship on the plane right there, just talking back and forth. And then he actually followed all of my hunts in Africa through Facebook after, I got off the plane. And it was just this weird situational thing. He commented on a couple posts, and he's like, "Hey, I'm the guy that sat beside you on the plane." I was like, "That's pretty neat." So that's pretty awesome stuff. I just, you know, at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. We all love the same thing. I could care less what bow, honestly, or broadhead you use, as long as you love it. Keep using it, because that's what hunting's about. Like, it's not about Triplepoint. It's not about the Clovis. It's not about any certain bow company. It's about the lifestyle of being a bow hunter, and then there's the what you get after that, which is, awesome meat for your family to use and make amazing things with. So it's I can't golf. I'm horrible at it. I always tell people that. I shank the ball. I try, but I'm horrible at it. And I last time I checked, you can't eat a golf ball. So now I have, my recreation is hunting, and I get something I eat when I'm done as a reward. If I'm lucky,
you got any?
No, I think Josh, as we're sitting here, hopefully everybody's getting their bows ready. Hopefully everybody's getting the bows restrung. They're not waiting till the end of September or into October to do this. And if people are also looking to get new broadheads or try new things, how do they go find that? Where do they go? How can they watch some of the videos and see some of the animals that you've had a chance to put the Clovis through? And what should they know, and how can they find you to learn more about Triple Point and about the Clovis?
Yeah, I try to make things real simple for people. I tell them, just get on our website, www.triplepointoutdoors.com, or Google it. You'll find us in the first couple hits, probably. You can check out our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We try to do a lot of media. I do something every day, multiple times a day, usually, and put it on. And I try to show people from the beginning. I've tried to show people the entire process of and I think people were interested in kind of in an organic way how this company started, and I literally let people kind of watch as I went along. And there's some proprietary patented things in the broadhead that I don't really talk about a whole lot. There's some tolerances and some things that I don't get into a lot with people because of intellectual property. But as far as the development and the use of this broadhead, I want people to just watch us, come along with us. It's kind of like a journey, and we've been having a lot of fun with it. Not only getting the broadhead built, but every single broadhead that leaves my hand, as we do a spot check and quality check at the end, I always think, this broadhead could be going through an animal of a lifetime for somebody. We want to make sure it's right going out the door. And so, what you can be assured of is when you buy these broadheads from Triplepoint, they're going to get to your mailbox from our shop. They're going to be ready to hunt. So you can pop them out of the package and go hunt with them if you want to, or you can put them in lock mode and do some target shooting if you want to do that first. But I would say, just find us online. You can check out our website. We try to make it pretty user friendly as far as what you're looking to do. We do have right and left bevel options. That's something that a lot of people have asked questions about. They said, what's a right bevel? Well, basically, we sharpen the broadhead and the tip and the blades, so it's going to rotate the direction that an arrow generally rotates, which is going to be clockwise coming out of a bow. Now, there are some specific setups where guys want a left-hand bevel. I would tell you it's probably 1% of any orders. It's just not out there a lot. But some guys will do a special twist in their bowstrings. They want a special helical on their fletching, and they counterclockwise that arrow, and we can do left bevel as well. So you got a nice selection of broadhead weights, mechanical versus fixed, to hopefully meet any need you need as a bow hunter. And like I said, we're constantly innovating. So I'm actually coming out with something brand new now that I was able to do with this broadhead. So it's not like it's done. And to me, nothing's ever really done. You're constantly tweaking and improving and bringing everything into where you want it to be.
And for the fixed blade guys that are trying to get their FOC up and they're really focused on arrow weight, you guys, the weight on the fixed will go up to 175, I think, right? On the
Yeah,
website?
yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have from the fixed. We have everything from a vented 125 up to the solid blade 150 and 175.
And I'm going to be shooting the fixed 150s when we go to Africa here this year. That's what we're holding here for those that can't see us and that Joe and I've been passing back and forth,
Yeah.
trying not to cut ourselves on. But that's what I'm going to be running. So if people are looking for a fixed blade on a heavy setup or a reliable mechanical that's not going to pre-deploy, it sounds like you might have a good option for them to try and see how it flies.
Yeah. It's interesting. The mechanical, I think, is a kind of a special animal to me because it's the first one I developed, and an actual complete impetus to do everything in this mechanical the way it's performing. But one thing I will say is, you won't really find a better flying mechanical, and that's the way it's built. Due to the fact that the blades lock on the magnet, you have no noise. The blades aren't vibrating back and forth inside of an O-ring or something or a rubber band. The blades are essentially locked, but not, since they're on the magnet. And what you'll get is a lot of mechanicals, especially mechanicals, at the shot, and I'm talking the high speed crossbows of today. You're talking, the 450 to 500 feet per second range. A lot of mechanicals cannot handle that speed. They either open up completely or they flexure. So, when I say flexure, I mean the blades kind of do this. They want to, just for a split second on the shot, because of inertially they want to stay still. The whole ferrule is taking off. The blades want to and do one of these things, and you might get one blade doing this just a little bit, but it's enough to throw all your weight off completely at the start. And so you're going to end up with some other broadheads that are mechanical. If the blades move at all at 100 yards, you might get like a 12-inch grouping. Where with a Clovis 100 yards, you're going to get like a millimeter grouping. It will fly perfectly every single time. And so that's something that I can absolutely promise all of our customers. When you shoot a mechanical broadhead called the Clovis, you're not going to get pre-deployment. You're not going to have any flight variation. It will 100% work every single time.
So I ordered the fixed initially, and then I left to come up here to Michigan. But when I get back to Georgia, I think you guys sent me some 125s that I'm excited to shoot and try those out. And those, Joe and I both shot a different brand of mechanical that have a locking mechanism so you can shoot to the target. The mechanical, you can use that on your targets on a regular basis as well because it's got a locking component, right?
Yeah, so our blades actually do not lock open, but what they do is I include a set of what I call locked practice blades. So it's a separate blade. And what that allows us to do is you actually take off your cutting blades. Now, you can shoot a regular Clovis in any target you want and rip it out. It's going to be fine. a lot of mechanical broadheads, when you do that the first time, their blades are already bent. I know several different companies. You shoot at a target and you rip that mechanical out, your blades are already kind of toasted. With a Clovis, you can do it as much as you want. However, to be able to lock those blades in, what I developed is a whole special set of blades to put on, which are much thinner that lock down. But by the time you put your set screws in, what you have is a 100 grain broadhead equal to your hunting broadhead with the solid blades on it for hunting, and both weights are exactly the same. And so when you put a set screw in, you're adding 2 to 3 grains of weight in any broadhead you put one in. Whereas with ours, everything stays balanced all the way across the platform.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I haven't opened that package yet, but I'm excited to.
So
Yeah.
if you had to give up all your broadhead and you only could shoot one for the rest of your life, what one are you picking? Mechanical or mechanical? Or wait, mechanical or fixed? Sorry.
I like what your answer was though, because it's my answer.
Yeah,
Mechanical or
yeah,
mechanical.
that was my answer too. I was just like, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
mechanical all day.
So I can tell you right now, it's already done. Like we've already been through this. I will be shooting personally because I've shot the 125 in Africa. I shot the 100 also. I'll personally be shooting the 100 grain mechanical helicut the rest of my life, hands down. I put it through every animal. It will take out any animal on the planet. Of course, I'm not saying an elephant. I would suggest probably still a fixed blade on something of that size, or a hippo. But I'll bet you it could do it. I'm not saying it wouldn't do it. But for me personally, I love not thinking about the shot. I love as an archer when I hit that release, 100% know that broadhead's doing what it needs to do and it's going to go where it needs to go. So I just like how it flies so much. It flies like a bullet. So
All
mechanical.
right. Okay. Okay. You got one year from now. You got one goal. Doesn't have to be hunting related, or it can be hunting related. What's something that we can look forward to next time if we see what do you have to look forward to? Like, what's a goal for you?
We're going to have a pretty cool broadhead that I'm working on now come out this next spring, and that's something that I'm putting a lot of time into right now. There are some challenges with the broadhead that's designed to do this. A lot of companies have worked on some problems with it. I believe I have something kind of figured out. It'll be kind of fun with this type of broadhead, but it'll be kind of neat because one thing I've wanted to do, and this makes it easy for me and the customer, is everything's modular. So the Clovis is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. I don't care if you buy a mechanical and then you want to convert to a fixed blade, or your fixed blade go back to mechanical, or convert it into a turkey head, or convert it into maybe even like a turkey neck, a guillotine broadhead someday. You never know, what's going to happen. But I like the modularity of it because you can switch tips out, switch blades out, and do what you want to do. Now, what I don't know is, and something I'm going to ask you guys is this. Now it's my turn. I have my goal. My goal, right? What's my
Yeah.
goal? That's a hard question to answer. I think a year ago, my goal would be way different than it is now. A year ago, the goal was to get everything up and running well and efficiently. We've now done that. To get the packaging done, that was a task. To get the official packaging done, the blister packs and all that sort of thing. That's a lot of time and money into that sort of thing with packaging, but that got done. I would say a year from now, my goal is to continue getting the knowledge out to anybody I can that our broadhead can be shot by any archer, any kid, any person, any age across the planet out of any bow. And I want to tell people how simple it is because I think sometimes when you look at crossbows, many companies have crossbows that have their own nock, and you have to shoot their bolt or else it doesn't work. And some of that is engineering, but let's be honest, some of it is marketing and some of it is profit driven. Okay. I wanted to have something that was universal, and I believe we've done it. The deployment was the biggest question. I said, do I go forward? Nah, because by the time the blades are back and locked, it's already halfway in the animal. Do I go mid? Entry holes are kind of small with those. Rear. For me, it was like hands down has to be rear deploy, because with that rear deploy, you get immediate large entrance wounds going through the animal, and there's no question of it opening. So I think a year from now, my goal would be to continue the reach, to explain to people how much I love the broadhead personally as a bow hunter and not just the owner of the company.
Do you have anything?
No, I think that's good. Joe, if you want to close us out, and then we can the Generations to Hunt and Joe do a really good job of trying to tag some of these things. So we'll try to make sure that all that's tagged in the content. So if people want to find it, they can click the link, or they can just look up Triplepoint on Google. I think it's the first option that comes up. I've done it a few times.
Yeah.
And but yeah, Joe, go ahead.
do you have anything before I do any closing marks? I mean, anything you
Yeah,
want to say?
well, I think I want to first of all thank you guys for having me on as an
Yeah.
invite. It's been phenomenal. I enjoy talking with fellow bow hunters and just archers in general. And then the other thing is, I just want to thank everybody out there for their interest in the broadhead and triple point, and from our family personally. We put a lot of heart into this. It's taken a lot of time, energy, and effort. Work hard every day for those people out there that are customers and just friends, just the friends that I've gained, the contacts I've made. Even like just knowing Mike, I can tell you guys just right now. I mean, it's like the guys from Bowhunter Planet. When I did a podcast with them before turkey season, we ended up that podcast. By the end of the podcast, it was just like we were friends sitting there hanging out talking. And I feel the same way with you gentlemen. So it's been a blessing to be able to be on the podcast. I want to thank you guys, and also I just want to send a big thank you to all the companies out there, people that are partners working with Triple Point. We've had an enormous amount of interest in the industry of people um, wanting to partner with us in different ways, and that's want to thank them for that because it's been pretty phenomenal. I have learned so much. The different types of nocks I've been using, the different bows I've been able to shoot. It's been a pretty phenomenal year for us, and I just want to thank everybody for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our 7 days in Africa. I'm sure we'll have plenty fireside
Oh boy.
chats and more discussions in the hides and back at camp. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Johan and I call them adventures. We have adventures, and it's always something. There's always something crazy that happens. Like that thunderstorm. You guys see that thunderstorm in Africa when we were there? Did you see any
I
video of that?
did. I did.
Oh
I'm,
my
I'm
goodness. It was 95, super hot. I'm sweating to death, right? And we could see it in the distance, raining like crazy. And they're like, "Oh, you just wait. We're gonna give you about a minute, and that's gonna be here." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's miles away." 1 minute later, absolute downpour, like 45 degrees. It was so cold.
That's when you look around and you feel like Dorothy in Kansas and you realize this is not
Yeah,
Ohio anymore.
yeah. I'm like, everything Africa literally is trying to kill me. Everything, including the weather. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Have a great day.